You like a lonely man. Without me, you're not like everyone. That's he's why I choose you. You're the one who can make me happy. Oh, you know you're in love when you come follow me. Because we are the team. You see the better than truth.
I'm Tim Ellis, and thank you for joining us for Laneway Live. Tonight's guest comes all the way from Sydney, and he has one of the most unusual origin stories of any magician I've ever heard. Please welcome Joel Ozborn. Hello, Joel. Where are you?
I'm in my bedroom at the moment. I'm under lockdown. My fiance has put me into the bedroom, and she gets the rest of the apartment. So I don't know if that's got anything to do with the coronavirus, but you know, I'm following the rules.
You're very obedient. But you're in Sydney?
Yeah, in Balmain. Just got back from the Adelaide Fringe Festival. Well, when I said just got back, that was on Monday. We got a 6:50 a.m. flight out of there, so no one would be in the airport. And it was weird traveling on a plane with 15% capacity, you know, but it was good in these current circumstances.
So you get to sit anywhere you want.
Yeah, totally. Actually, we had an aisle to ourselves, and the lady started coughing in the aisle in front of us. So my fiance Erica and I took off down towards the back of the plane and found a vacant aisle. And then the lady, a hostess from Qantas, comes up and says, and what's your name and what seat were you sitting in? Taking down the details, which is good. I guess it's good they're doing something like that. But it was, we got back safely. We have the thermometer that we keep next to the bed, that keeping our temperatures checked. Yeah. So far so good.
So Adelaide Fringe must have been a bit weird on the last week, because that's when the virus hit. I heard that sales dropped a little.
Yeah, across the board it was weird. Like people buying tickets and just not showing up, understandably in a way. Like I was telling my audiences that were there, the two of them, I was saying to them, listen, you know, you guys obviously do not give a stuff about coronavirus. And then after I was talking about that, the lady coughed, and I'm like, oh well, this will be the last show we ever see. You know, I hope it was worth it. It's a show to die for.
This show was the Amazing Jonathan show?
Yeah, the show about the story of, this 12-year-old kid that befriends this crazed drug-taking comic magician, the Amazing Jonathan, and all the crazy lifetime story between the two of them.
So this is it's like a spin-off from the documentary.
Yeah, it covers some of the stuff in the documentary, because that covered, you know, the story of Jonathan and I, but also a lot of stuff that couldn't make it into the documentary as well. So a lot of crazy stories that. But you know what the crazy thing is with this show? When I first wrote it, it was like 2 hours long. I edited it down to about 95 minutes, and then got it down to an hour for the festival. So it's like the truncated version of the story. But, you know, for doing the theatre shows, I want to get it to about 80 minutes. I think that'll be the ideal length of time for it. But it was good discipline getting it down to 60 and performing it every night too, you know, just running it in show after show. It's like getting a lot tighter and finding little nuances and deliveries. And because, you know, I'm used to doing stand-up where you just get up there and you kind of, you know, you riff it on stage and you kind of find the kind of wording and find it. But with this, because it's a narrative to the story, it's been a lot more complicated. And so I have to hit all the right, you know, points throughout the story in order for it to, you know, come full circle at the end, where if I leave out a bit here and then do a reference to it later on, it's kind of all falls apart. So the story structure is something that I found really important with this show, and it's in a 3-act structure, and
Yeah, so for the people who have not seen it already, the documentary is free online. I'm going to just show a little trailer to give them a taste of what to expect.
Describe the amazing Jonathan in one word.
Crazy.
I'm eating a razor blade for your entertainment pleasure.
Mostly it was this force of nature coming at you that was like this big steamroller that kept attacking you.
Oh, God! Oh, God!
He takes the worst parts of other magic acts and makes them actually a good part of his.
Sometimes magic sounds like tape. Just take the lights all the way down.
Magic, it's everything. Magic is my life. I can do whatever I want, and they laugh.
Just don't take your eyes off the spoon.
When I started working with Jonathan, I would hear about Joel Ozborn.
My dad got us tickets to go see The Amazing Jonathan. It was like a freight train, and me sitting there as a 12-year-old thinking, that's what I want to do when I grow up.
Joel had an obsession with Jonathan.
We used to camp out in front of my hotel room. He called me up and said, "You want to do this commercial? It pays $60,000 for one day taping." I'm like, maybe this isn't a creepy little kid.
And at the end of it, Jonathan said to me, "You want to move out to the States and be my road manager?" And I went, "Yes, I do."
He stuck with me. Probably saved my life through all that.
My heart is failing. I can't do shows anymore because my legs lock up.
It's kind of the Andy Kaufman thing. You don't really believe it. I still hope in my heart that he's just kidding.
I need to prove that I can still go out there and do it.
I decided to go back out and do one last tour.
If he drops dead on stage, that's probably the way he'd want to go out.
Dear Jonathan, seeing you take the stage like a freight train, I wanted to be part of that world. Not knowing where that train was headed was part of the adventure. Behind all the crazy, drug-taking, manic bravado, I see the kind, generous, caring person I know you to be.
So the movie itself is online free?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. All you do is go to YouTube, type in "Always Amazing," and just like that, and and then it's there to watch for your entertainment pleasure. And I think it's over like 652,000 views at the moment.
It is a very, very good documentary. I've watched it twice already. But the interesting thing, of course, you lived it, then you made the documentary, and now you're making the show about it, which is sounds like an amazing show. Are there any sort of specific highlights in the show that we should know about?
Well, there's it kind of brings to life these stories, and because I'm from a stand-up comedy background, I'm able to work in a lot of laughs throughout the story. But it covers everything from drug deals, hitmen, meeting comedy legends, suicide, being forced face down on the street with the LAPD, have their guns drawn on me. It's got everything,
Well, I remember you telling me some of the stories when we were on a cruise together, and it's certainly past the time when we're sitting on that long journey.
That was a long cruise that we were on. We were going to Hawaii, right?
It was, there was a whole bunch of us, and every day we'd meet for lunch, and we just listened to your stories.
We had a lot of time to shoot the breeze. What I loved was your reaction seeing the clock turn back when we changed time zones. That was great. I was like, remember we'd be sitting there and we were waiting to watch the clock turn back, and here we are, a group of grown-ups just elated over the changing of the time on the ship's clocks.
That's how exciting it gets on those high journeys. It was amazing.
It was. And the wave pool, that was a lot of fun.
Oh, yes.
The wave pool.
Sometimes the pool in the ship, the ocean will get very rocky, and you get an automatic wave pool. You just jump in and you splosh side to side. It's fantastic.
Yeah. It was great. That was actually a really fun cruise. We had I remember that. I remember that cruise fondly. Some of them kind of blend in. You're like, whatever. But that one was good fun.
But it was. It was extra long.
Yeah. But you lucked out. You were able to fly straight back to Sydney, I had to fly to San Francisco and then fly back to Sydney. I was back in Sydney for a day, and then I flew back to America. So it was just crazy.
Yeah, it's
I had to get back for a corporate gig.
Yeah, people don't realize how much travel is involved in just going to and from cruises.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. You know, the gig is the most fun of all of those, of all that experience. It's the travel, and then just being stuck on a floating RSL for countless days. You know,
I remember walking down the corridor with Anthony Laffin, and we're just walking down, whinging about, oh, it's so terrible. We're waiting for this time of this flight, having to stay in a layover in this country and wait. We're just whinging the usual things that cruise performers whinge about, how long it took us to get to the ship. And a lady walked up and she went, "Oh, you two have the best job in the world." I went, "Yeah, we do. We really do."
Yeah. In hindsight, I was doing a gig in a mine once in South Australia, the Challenger Gold Mine, and it was crazy. You had to fly into Adelaide and then take a flight from there on this like Buddy Holly Air flight with a bunch of miners. Got down to the to the mine site, like the airport's like right there on the site, and then it's in the middle of the desert. And then I had a gig at 7:30 p.m. and then a gig as the sun was going down. I was performing in this outdoor area, and then as the sun was coming up, the next morning at 7:30 p.m. 7:30 a.m. I had a gig. And it was so weird doing the gig for miners, just covered in black soot and drinking, and then them coming to go, "Mate, you got the hardest job in the world." We just spent 10 hours underground. Okay, yeah.
Well, they know the truth. They know the truth,
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we have the most non-existent job in the world.
That's true. Yeah, it was kind of weird just seeing it's kind of like watching the stock market, all the gigs just disappearing, going down the schedule. I just want to know how far back, how far into the year it's going to go, because it was great doing the Adelaide Fringe Festival, getting the show ready for Melbourne, and I was meant to be going straight into the Melbourne Festival, and then that whole month cancelled, all the touring gigs cancelled. But you know what, the thing that makes it, I don't know, we're all in the same boat, so it kind of makes it a bit more kind of, you get over yourself pretty quick when you realize that everyone else is going through this. And like the tech people at my venue, they were meant to be going over to the Melbourne Festival. Everyone across the board is affected by this. So it's like, you can't really get too upset about it. You can just kind of, buckle down and get through it all together.
It is something that a lot of people have said it's a very unifying situation for the whole, not just the whole community, but the whole planet. And if we embrace that, there's something good coming of it.
I think the actual planet is the real beneficiary of this whole situation. You look at the pollution levels comparatively to months before, pretty much non-existent. Fish are back in the canals in Venice. The animals get a bit of respite. I think the world's. I think the actual Mother Nature is kind of enjoying this break at the moment.
So one of the interesting stories you told me, there were a lot of interesting stories you told me about your life with Amazing Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure which one I can even talk about.
There's no restrictions. There's no restrictions on this. No. Which one was it?
There's some that would spoil the documentary if you're watching it. So choose one carefully.
There's so many. I guess in the documentary they don't talk about going to these drug deals and junkyards at 1:30 a.m. or there was a plane one that was weird, because you get to know the airports like the back of your hand, when you're touring around the States. And Jonathan would often get into altercations with airline personnel, and he would often be in the right, but then he'd end up like yelling and swearing, which would then put him in the wrong. But the loudest I ever heard him scream, though, was not for a delayed or cancelled flight. It was for his life. We're on this flight coming back to LAX about 15 minutes from landing, when out of nowhere, the whole plane, swear to God, just flips over wing for wing. Air hostess throwing like a rag doll, everyone screaming, holding on for dear life. Then we leveled out for a fraction of a second before rolling over the other side. Overhead compartments, everything falling out. It was just mayhem. I've never heard a group of people scream like that before. Then we eventually leveled out. And, you know, it's weird, Tim, in moments like that where you think, you know, those seemingly near-death experiences that I got to contact the people I love and care about, tell them what they mean to me. That's most people. Jonathan, on the other hand, as we're walking through LAX airport terminal, he stops me and goes, you know, when that plane was going down, I honestly thought, am I the most famous person on this flight? That kind of encapsulates Jonathan, that moment.
He's just thinking, this is my moment. People are going to be, it was that Jonathan was on the plane the night he went down.
Yeah. It was
Buddy Holly moment.
Yeah. But yeah, there's so many crazy moments that happen that involve planes and drug deals, LAPD. Yeah, just a lot of it's weird. I look back on that now and go, I would never like put up with those situations that now in my life. But you know, when you're an 18-year-old kid hanging out with your idol, you kind of just go with the flow. You know,
you got together with Jonathan when you were a very young teenager.
Yeah, well, my dad took me to see him his first shows in Sydney when I was 12 years old. He thought, oh, what better thing to do than taking my son to see some crazy drug-taking comic magician up in King's Cross at the Hyatt Kingsgate. So
would have been Michael Jackson.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. And for anyone that's wondering, like, what a teenager was doing, hanging out with a grown man like this, it wasn't any Michael Jackson, Kevin Spacey kind of thing. We shared similar interests, you know, maybe not the drugs and porn, but besides that, you know, we shared similar interests. And yeah, I was just obsessed, you know. I was like, I'd never seen anything like it in my life. You know what it's like. You would have had those similar experiences when you see a magic show or a live performance when you're a kid, this impression that it has on you. And I was a pretty obsessive kid, so I just took matters into my own hands and found out what hotel he was staying at and went and waited outside his hotel for him. And then I called up the manager at the venue and found out Jonathan's legal name, Jonathan Zeller. So I called up the hotel, the Siebel Townhouse where he was staying, and got through to him on the phone and explained who I was and what I was calling about, trying to find out if he had a fan club to write to. And he was so generous. He said, you know, I got my final show coming up. Why don't you come along? I'll put your name on the door. And so, you know, went along and with my mum and, you know, got to know him and got his publicist details to write letters to. Never had a response from him. And I wrote countless letters to him, never heard back from him. It was as if I didn't even exist to him or something, you know. So he had this big, he did this big national tour, and at the end of the tour was a show at the Enmore Theatre in Sydney, this big sold-out show, and I went backstage afterwards, and he was surrounded by this group of people, and I noticed him walk away, and Jonathan, he wrote something on a piece of paper, and then made a beeline for Mum and I, and then and I handed Mum this camera, and I said, "Oh, Jonathan, could we get a photo together?" And Mum took this photo of Jonathan and I backstage, and then afterwards he handed me this piece of paper at the end of our conversation. He said, "You know, you don't have to worry about those letters anymore." As I saw him walk back off to the waiting group, I opened it up. It was his home phone number in LA. I'm like, Mum's looking at me. Joel really needs a girlfriend.
And this is like you're 12.
Oh no, I was about 15 at this point.
Oh, so
yeah.
But you met him first at 12, and so 3 years you've been writing these letters to him.
Yeah, never hearing anything back from him. And it was so weird, like when I saw, because my dad was in advertising, he was a creative director, and he organized this whole advertising campaign for Vicks, and Jonathan was going to be the face of the brand. And that day I was there on the film shoot. It was actually at the Enmore Theatre. I'm staying in the wing side of stage, watching him set up all the camera equipment and the lights and sound. And then suddenly in front of me, you know, like this monolithic figure, stood the amazing Jonathan with his black headband and red jacket. And he and I said, "Oh, Jonathan, you know, I wrote you letters." And he just goes, "Joel." I'm like, "Well, how did you?" And then I hear the director going, "Quiet on set, standing by, action." Then he goes out and he's filming the commercial. And then at the lunch break, I ran up to him like, "How do you remember my name?" He's like, "Oh, I was going through some files back in back home in LA and I found the letters and I never responded to. I kind of feel guilty. Let me make it up for you. Let's grab some lunch. And then, the rest is history.
I love in the documentary how he says, so this kid kept writing to me. I'm like, yeah. And then he wrote and said, hey, my dad wants you to do this commercial. It's going to pay this much money. I went, okay.
Maybe there's any creepy kid after all.
There's money to be made. I like the buy.
Yeah. So when I when I left school, he started up. Remember the Weird Stuff magic kit?
Yes.
That he had. Yeah.
You were
so
selling.
He started that up. Yeah, he started that up in Australia. Well, he was wanting to start it up, and he said to me, I want you to manage and run the whole business for me. So there I am, 18 years old, and CEO of the Weird Stuff Magic Kit Company. Admittedly, I was the only employee of the Weird Stuff Magic Kit Company. It was kind of like slave labor, but
why not make yourself CEO?
Yeah, totally. And then after that, he had a falling out with his manager, and he said, I got no one to manage and promote my upcoming shows in Australia. I want you to do it, Joel. I'm like, hang on, I've never done anything. And he's like, listen, you've been observing behind the scenes. You got this. You can do it. I'm like, all right, I'll do it. So suddenly thrown in the deep end, I'm negotiating contracts, doing media buyouts and placements, and promoting and managing his Australian shows. But thankfully, it all went well, and everyone made a lot of money. And then he said, how about you move out to America now, become my full-time tour manager? And that's when things really ramped up. And once I touched down in the States, that's when
And that's
was,
where we say you got to watch the documentary, download it, have a look at it.
Yeah.
It's very,
totally.
very entertaining and educational as well.
Yeah.
Now,
It's very educational of what to do with your life, but as importantly, what not to do with your life.
But there is another documentary as well, which is like an unofficial one. So we like yours. We don't like the other one.
Oh yeah, that's I think that's the quote. I think that's the quote to put out there, Tim.
So only watch Always Amazing. Do not watch any other Jonathan documentary.
Look, and if people are interested in knowing what went down with all that, when you go to watch Always Amazing, Steve Byrne, who's a brilliant comic, stand-up comic in the States, and directed this, and he had his own sitcom, Sullivan and Son. He's just finished off a feature film with Vince Vaughn's production company. And Steve did a brilliant job on it. But if anyone's interested in knowing about what went down between Steve's documentary and this other documentary, Steve has written a very comprehensive sort of open kind of letter in the comment section at the top of that of Always Amazing in the comment section below the clip. So there's everything is explained in that.
Amazing. So we get this this situation where you've lived the life, you've had the documentary, you've got the live show. The live show is now cancelled for the upcoming future.
Yeah.
What are you doing now? How are you going to spend your quarantine?
Just hanging out in the garage with my fiance Erica. Watching her do her thing, and she's very resourceful. Because she does like aerial acrobatics and performs magic, and she was actually performing magic at the Adelaide Festival as well, and getting standing ovations. It was great. And so we went to Spotlight, bought fabric yesterday. I'm looking at your curtain in the background there. I think that might have been the same material that she got, and she just set up a kind of makeshift studio to do aerial silks and acrobatics in there.
Well, that's what she's doing. Your job is just to watch. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
You're now an audience for the next 6 months.
Yeah, pretty much. But we've been talking about. I think we're going to create a magic act together. We were talking about it because because Erica's like worked with Jonathan over the years. Chris Angel, Masters of Illusion. So we've got a lot of knowledge between us on this. So we thought, well, we're in lockdown together. Why don't we just develop an act together for a bit of fun and a little side project. So we're going to work on that too.
There's always a silver lining out of everything, and if you can come up with a brand new show out of this, then there we go.
There is. I was just reminded when we were just talking about Jonathan. when you and I first met you at Bernard's Magic when I went in there with Jonathan in Melbourne back in the 90s, and I remember you telling me at a later date how Jonathan just came into the store and he's just buying stuff, going, well, what are some cool tricks, Tim? Show me some tricks. And you like demonstrate a trick. Yeah, I'll take that one. Yep, I'll take that one. And you said, like, you know, a few hours later, you're watching him on national TV performing those tricks. And like, he doesn't even bother rehearsing or practicing.
He was doing some trick and he's like, and what, yeah, I don't know. Like,
it worked when Tim did it.
But that was his style, you know, that was his style. And, you know, and before we wrap up, how is he now? You catch up with him all the time. I assume you were going to head over there?
Yeah. Well, I was going over there in April, and that's all kind of put on hold now. But Erica and I were just having a chat with him day before last, and you know, he's got everything. He's got his money, guns and drugs all stockpiled. So he's good. He's all good.
No food?
No, come on. You don't need food when you got his diet. But no, seriously, he sounded real good on the phone. You know, he has his ups and downs, like but it's amazing that he's still with us. It's great. It's miraculous. But he sounded in good spirits. He's because of his condition, he's got to be in lockdown. He can't be seeing anyone. So he's having food delivered, groceries delivered to the house, and the whole house is just in lockdown there. But he's got a pretty sweet house out there in Vegas, so it's a pretty good place to be in a lockdown.
I've heard about all the secret gimmicks and things in his house.
Oh, he's got everything.
Halloween parties too.
Oh yeah, the Halloween parties. Yeah, but the whole house is rigged up. Like he's got the doll from the Chucky film, and he's got that in a cabinet. But he's got this thing behind it with a remote, so it jumps out of the cabinet at the person when they get up too close to it. He's got another one at the cat door and the little cat flap. But then he's got this like crazy looking, ferocious looking cat that just comes straight through the cat door if anyone's walking by. He's got spiders and stuff ready to fall from the ceiling. He's got a tree that blows up outside. He's got pyrotechnics hooked up to it. So he's got like this palm tree out there that just explodes, and yeah. But then he's got like real sort of subtle things too. Like he'll have a glass and he'll just go up to a painting of this pasture with cows in the field, and he'll just put the glass in front of the painting like that, and then milk starts coming out of the cow's udder into the glass just as he's having a conversation. You know, just kind of weird warp stuff.
Creativity.
Yeah, he's got this other one too, where like back in like the 1800s and the turn of the century, they'd have like these props and sort of pranks that they'd make out of really fine furniture, but they're like you could really get hurt in something like this. Like one of them, he had a chair that would it's this old antique chair. My mate Grant came over and sat in it. But he's got a pulley thing where the chair flips back, but as it goes back, he's got the shell of a shotgun, whatever it's like gunpowder built into it, so it like has this massive gunshot sound that goes off, and he's just got that hooked up just to play on unsuspecting victims. Like when we were living in LA, he had this chair, you know, it was like the electric chair, but this one had like a stun gun built into the base of it to give someone the 30,000. Like he's always got to take it one step further, you know.
Don't tell Phil Cass about that one; he'll want it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been great. Version. It's been great chatting with you, and I hope you can make up that show with yourself and Erica, because that's going to sound like it'll be a great show.
Yeah, we got a unique kind of theme and concept for it. So I'll tell you about that.
I look forward to seeing it at the Melbourne Magic Festival one day.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, would love that. Well, I'll be bringing the show to Melbourne anyway, and I love that theatre that you got there too. When you first told me about that, I thought I'd love to come down and like do a month in that theatre. You know, just shows every night. It's just a great space, and would be a great place to workshop something. But yeah, down the line.
So I guess the best thing for everybody right now is to follow that link and watch the documentary if you haven't watched already, because it is absolutely fantastic. I sort of want to say amazing, but amazing
Yeah.
is used too often for the amazing Jonathan, because everything he's done, his whole life has been amazing in every definition of the word. So thank you so much for talking with us, Joel. And
Pleasure, Tim.
we'll get to see your show very soon.
Yeah, definitely. I'll let you know when I'm bringing it to Melbourne.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic. And so thank you again. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Yeah.